The complete history of comic books. From the 1930s to the present day. The mid to late 1930s take place under President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The United States is still deep in the Great Depression. Money is scarce, unemployment is high, and affordable entertainment is essential.
Yeah, like I could feel that time. Like a lot of stuff was on radio during that period, during that period of time. Which even getting a radio, man, like, they had all various sizes, but getting a radio wasn't a guarantee for everyone, right? So, and even that, they didn't have a whole ton of shows. And maybe I'll get into talking about like how long did radio even stay on? But yeah, you can understand how there's not a lot of entertainment. And I think at this time,
radio,
comic books,
pulp magazines, and newspapers dominate popular media. Comic books emerge as one of the cheapest
I mean, damn, like think about it, man. It's been a long time since we even looked at newspapers the same way. Like, this is kind of the interesting thing, being Gen X, watching. Like, I used to work for newspapers. I worked for a couple of newspapers in Southern California at the time when selling newspaper was actually still matter. I sold newspaper advertising. So, like, my whole world, and my spouse, my wife, also sold we were selling for rival newspapers in the same city in Southern California. So we were both like, and this is old school when I was around like the Velux machines and stuff like that. So I've gotten to see, so of course, like in that mix, we both had worked for tech companies as well. She was actually doing more marketing. I was in sales. But, we had both worked for some internet companies even prior to that. So we were both kind of seeing that like mix over. In fact, we had both worked for like companies that were primarily startup internet companies, or mine was more startup. Hers was more kind of already like in place. I think she worked for like a nutraceutical company, and I ended up working for a place that sold a lot of early like mini computers, phones. Like we were really on the high end at this time of like before phones really got to be where they were as common. You had to order stuff. Like I was a guy, like the military order from us. Like we were all up in there. But that's a different conversation. Let's get back to the comic books.
Options available to working class families and children. During this period, comic books typically cost 10 cents.
Yeah, this is kind of like the root, like 10 cents, man. This is where comic books start off. Like the last time I checked out in the last piece, I think in this book, I think they're about $5, $4.99. But man, I would have to assume that like really good graphic novels have got to be like at least $20, $30. Like I bought, just to have it, I bought Hulk Planet. I think it's Hulk Planet, right? I have like the graphic novel. This is a hardbound graphic novel book, like premium artwork. I literally haven't cracked this thing open. I just like it because it looks dope, right? So that's the scale where comic books started to where they are right now in terms of price-wise, right?
A price low enough to be purchased with pocket change even during economic hardship. 1930s, comics become a thing. Industry context. Comic books grow out of newspaper strip reprints and pulps. They're cheap, low status, and experimental.
Yeah, I mean, they were throwing a lot of stuff in the newspapers, right? Like, I remember as a child, reading the newspaper, like no BS, like, my grandfather going through it. Like, of course, he was going to take the front page and, he was a sharp guy. So he was kind of watching his money. So that's kind of where he was at with it. And then like the social stuff, like everybody would be able to dive something out of the comic books, right? Out of the newspapers, right? And it was more the comics. Now, by that time coming around for me, in the 70s, I feel like all the comic book stuff had kind of been phased out. So we had, kind of the old school. And a lot of those things went on. Like, this is where you used to jump off. You used to be in the comics or in the newspaper sections first before you jumped off. Like Garfield, like the Peanuts did their stint in the comic strip. I don't know if that's where he started from, but I know a lot of things started. Calvin and Hobbes, all these things like started in the comic books. And that's how you would jump off. So this is back when the newspaper had a lot more power, right? Like newspaper never saw this coming. Newspapers never saw that this day was going to be here now, because back then the newspapers were so strong that everything was coming from newspapers. Newspapers were Hollywood. Before Hollywood was big, it was big newspapers. Newspapers was the one who was running everything back in the day.
No one thinks mythology yet. Key DC milestones. 1935 National Allied Publications founded by Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson. Publishers New Fun Number 1, one of the first comic books with all original material. 1936 New Comics Number 1 launches. Mix of adventure, humor, pulp. No capes yet. 1937 Detective Comics, Inc. formed with Harry Dunenfeld and Jack Leibowitz. Detective Comics Number 1 hits the stands. The DC in DC Comics comes from this title.
I mean, that's profound right there. This is literally where DC Comics come from. Detective Comics. I mean, it was a whole different day and age when comic books first got started, right? Like, that was kind of the principal thing. They were a whole different thing. They were a whole different kind of animal. And we don't do detective stuff like we used to. Like, it used to, like, this is, again, the day and age. I think, like, the Dick Tracys were popping off. So a different time in terms of, like, what we were looking for. And to see, like, you know, those comic books, the branch out to the heroes, really sparking a whole industry is pretty incredible.
Marvel side. No Marvel yet. Martin Goodman is still just a general pulp publishing hustler. 1938 to 1945, the Golden Age and World War II. As the late 1930s turn into the 1940s, Franklin D. Roosevelt remains president. The United States enters World War II after Pearl Harbor in 1941.
Right.
The national mood is patriotic, anxious, and mobilized. Media is expected to reinforce unity, confidence, and American strength. Entertainment becomes a tool for morale. Throughout World War II, comic books remain priced at 10 cents. This stable pricing ensures comics remain mass entertainment, widely available to children and U.S. soldiers overseas.
Like, that's a powerful thing, man. Like, how much of your culture gets embraced in war efforts, like, right? Like, when back in the day, I don't know if we still say the same thing now. I don't know if we see as much media coming out of wars now as we used to, but World War II was a big boom for comic books. I think in part because soldiers abroad, you're abroad, you're traveling, people send you something to read. It allows you to, kind of be in tune with culture, like, solves, breaks up the monotony for them, right? Obviously, they're already in paper form, they're super cheap. And then just like it being cheap, and they were so culturally relevant and well. Like, everything comes out of these. Like, we're going to talk about some of these, but like, I'll let them talk about a couple of these things first before I kind of give my thoughts on them.
Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, Namor, and the Human Torch rise. Superheroes become propaganda icons and modern myths. Industry context.
Yeah, this is the time, like, Captain America, like, this is first of all, let's look at the longevity of all these characters. These are the first characters that really had any kind of like strength or gravity, right? We're talking about Wonder Woman, we're talking about Superman, Batman, all these guys kind of born out of this era. So this is the 30s, and we're still repping these same guys right now. So we're creeping up on 100 years, right? In the next decades, we're in the 90-year range of messing with Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. That is enhanced staying power. And then we also see Captain America. Now, obviously, he is the most directly relatable to the war efforts, right? Like, as a hero, like, obviously, like, early Captain America. Let me find a depiction, man. Early Captain America, right? His whole mission was fight Nazis, right? Like, that was the whole thing. So this was so much in tune with culturally what was going on, and so to see this hero that was inspired. Some of the other ones they named didn't survive, into this day and age. One of the big ones is Namor, and Namor is one of my favorite characters, but we don't really even talk about it. The Namor character that we knew has been completely reintegrated to kind of an amazing degree. Like, I honestly don't even recognize this Namor as the Namor, right? I literally don't. I don't see anything in this character that kind of reflects. Like, they change his, especially with the MCU, right? Which is absolutely terrible about what the MCU does. But we do see those initial characters, even the Human Torch. Like that Human Torch became, he died, right? And then like Johnny Storm carried the mantle. But the first Human Torch, man, and I'll have to track this one too. Like the first Human Torch, he was a robot, and I think he became somebody else. Like maybe he even became the Vision. And I'll have to track that one, man. That'll be a good history, because I think they just reused this body, which I don't understand how a war era body could even manifest anything going forward. But that's what they did, right? So that character is a very, very interesting character in the long scene. But Captain America clearly got through. He's one of the oldest. Because all the other, like, Marvel really didn't really hit. It started coming a little bit later. But you see, DC was already lined up with, like, its core. DC had developed its core that's going right now back in 1938. Like, and what these characters would do, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, they really defined how we look at heroes, like 100% of the way, right? So let's get back into the dissertation here.
Late Depression plus pre-war anxiety. Comics go from throwaway entertainment to mass market myth. Key DC milestones. 1938 Action Comics number 1. First appearance of Superman. Birth of the superhero genre.
Think about that, right? Superman himself was the birth of the superhero character. The entire genre was born out of Superman. The OG and character is still here. He's had more influence on the entire genre than any other characters. This is why there's so many derivative of Superman always around. Why DC can never really kill Superman. They kind of play with him just so they can emotionally like kill him, but they know damn well they're about to bring Superman back, right? And now we have more iterations of Superman right now than we've ever had before. Even one of the better shows, the best shows, have some version of Superman in it, right? When we talk about the boys, obviously Homelander represents, Superman. It's a weird like industry, like entertainment thing they put on it, but that's what it is, right? I've done a couple of videos. I talk about the Viltrumites in Invincible. That's 100% born out of Superman mythology. Brightburn, man. If you haven't checked out Brightburn, man, I did a big breakdown on Brightburn. Like that's an incredible piece. Like it's a real like crazy look at like if this alien super being comes down to Earth and he ain't playing about what he wants to do. He's pure. I'm taking over. I'm killing everybody. Like that's my destiny, right? And what are you guys gonna do about it? The answer is nothing. And that's why it's so terrifying, because he's a kid. So you can see he's just getting warm, man. And he's jumping off as early as possible. But we'll get back into the Superman.
1939 Detective Comics number 27. First appearance of Batman, noir vigilante, urban crime tone. 1940 Batman number 1.
Like Batman, I mean, another, I don't know if there's been as many variants of Batman, because he's kind of a particularly weird, he's at a weird space, right? Because they utilize, I mean, Batman has really had more variations in how Batman's been presented than any other character. Like we see different versions of Superman, but Batman, even within Batman lore, is this vastly different creature. We're presented with what we see in the Batman movies. We have like the Adam West TV version of Batman, which is nothing like Batman is on the in the comic books. In the DC world, obviously a much darker figure, and they kind of play with Batman a little bit. He's a detective, but he's kind of a superhero at the same time, which is I have my issues with that and what Batman does, but I can't argue with the longevity of this character. Again, 1940s, and we're still talking about Batman right now, and there's probably somewhere a Batman movie in the works at present time, right? Like real time.
Introduces Joker and Catwoman, locking in Rogues Gallery storytelling.
I mean, damn, this is some OG. Like, I didn't realize the Joker himself. I've always known these two characters to be linked together, obviously since the inception. But really, I didn't realize that the Joker was there from day one. Like, he's a day one. And I think they said, was that Catwoman as well? Like, damn, that's a pretty long lineage that they've been kind of going back and forth. So you see they get the two pillars on Batman way back in the day in those characters, and they kind of remain true to that even now.
1940 All-Star Comics number 3. Justice Society of America, first superhero team book. 1941 All-Star Comics number 8. First appearance of Wonder Woman. Feminine power enters the myth set.
Again, a landmark character, so a little bit later than the others, but again, another enduring character. I mean, Jesus, the guys who made these characters, man, your bank checks must just be real, because you've made some of the most successful characters in anything. There's not many more characters in anybody's stories, right? I mean, maybe Mary Shelley, but she, Frank, maybe Mary Shelley, maybe someone like Mary Shelley, maybe the first one who wrote down Dracula, maybe, right? But if you were the guy or the woman who sat up and was like, man, I've been thinking about this superhero character. First of all, people are like, what? What is a superhero character in the first place? I don't know what the shrooms were like in that period of time, but you would have had to have been something like that. If you were the first person to pen these characters, think about how many minds these guys have touched. How many times Wonder Woman has influenced someone's thought. Let's see, first Wonder Woman. And this is early Wonder Woman. Like, it's comical. I mean, I guess because it was a comic book. But just these representations, like, man, to all the way to now, and all the lore that's been shaped around Wonder Woman herself, like massive TV shows, obviously, multiple movies of, moderate successes here and there. I still feel like she lives, for me, always lives better in the comic book. Although I got to give Linda Carter her props. I mean, she had a whole run, of a television show strictly dedicated to her. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like campy in the Batman, like the early Batman stuff. I'm sorry, man, if y'all don't like it, but the early Batman stuff to me is a joke. Like, I don't respect none of that Adam West and none of that. I don't respect none of that. And anyone who's attached to that, you should be ashamed. I get it was a different era. Right? I'm thinking this is 50s, 60s era. And I think you guys were just kind of starting to experiment with weed and other drugs. Perhaps too much. Okay? That's what I'm going to say. But definitely we see Wonder Woman back on the set, early in time. And she's endured as one of the most significant characters in comic book history, period.
Key Marvel Timely Milestones. 1939 Timely Publications founded by Martin Goodman. Releases Marvel Comics number 1. Debut of the Human Torch and Namor the Submariner. 1940.
Wow, that's weird. Like, I mean, I don't know what they were smoking down at Marvel Comics, but why would these even be your first characters, man? 1941 Human Torch. Why would this be your one of your initial, like, I get, like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, how did they figure that a half Atlantean and a robot would be their main focus characters for a fledgling comic book company? I have no idea why they thought that was going to be the case. But, right along after that, they got with it, and they got, in 1941, obviously Captain America comes out to save the day. I'm a big Namor fan myself, the OG Namor, but man, just the idea that it would, like, man, you see how the company started off, very, very different mindset. DC locked in with 3 benchmark pillars, right, within a short span. Superman first, Batman, Wonder Woman, you're locked. A lot of what they would do afterwards is kind of ridiculous. Like, you guys should be ashamed of Aquaman. I don't see how you're not. Maybe that's a reaction to Namor, possibly, because he was Atlantean and that opened up that whole gateway, and that's probably what it was. So there's a lot going on in these first, like, this is the first, like, 11 years of comic books that we're seeing a couple of, like, we at least see 4 real benchmark characters coming in the first, 11 years of comic books as we know it. Pricing still about the same. We're in 1941 right now. Let's go a little bit more and kind of see what else we can uncover here.
1. Captain America Comics number 1. Captain America debuts, punching Hitler on the cover before the US enters World War II.
That's an important thing, man. This is really telling you a lot about it. Captain America, 1941. Yeah, man, this is live. This is it right here, right? Captain America punching Hitler in the face, right? No jokes about it. No misintent. We know what's going on here, and that's how that tells you a lot about what the mindset was, what Captain America was supposed to be, and he still remained true to that. You know, when they reintroduced Captain America, him still fighting the Red Skull, and I'll be honest, like me coming into comic books, I remember him fighting the Red Skull more than anything else, right? This is, you know, I didn't start really reading comic books until like the end of the 70s, like probably in the 80s is when I really got into comic books. But we were still going through that World War II, you know, not propaganda, but just mindset. Like that's 100%, you know, what it was. So this whole identity, you know, was really rooted in this fight against the Nazis, right? I mean, that's essentially what it was. We still see it. It comes across in The Boys, you know, their series. They face that with Stormfront. But a lot of the comic book stories, like, you know, World War II was really influential in terms of how we saw other media, like how it would affect other media. It did not just stay contained to, movies, and it's all over the place. You know, comic books were a big part of because it was easily definable as heroes and villains, and at that time, like everything about a country went to the war effort. I mean, it was a whole different thing. You were selling war bonds. They even touch on that in the MCU Captain America movie. But this is a big part of like who we are as a total culture. So let's get back into it and let's see where else this is going to take us.
Timely leans hard into patriotic, in-your-face propaganda heroes. Cultural meaning. Superheroes become war propaganda, morale boosters, and power fantasies. DC equals institutional icon heroes. Timely Marvel equals brasher, rougher, more chaotic energy.
You know, and that's very, very true. Like, even with Superman's inception, I know he also fought against fascism. Like, that was like, Superman was created by two Jewish men. We do know that. And so he was really a response to standing up to that as well. So this is where Superman was coming from. This is where, we know Captain America comes from. And I think Wonder Woman's early stories are also tied to fighting against the war. And in fact, I remember in the first movie, the Gal Gadot movie, they kind of go into that, pretty heavily. Like they pretty heavily talk about that. So we're seeing how much, the war effort or the fight against the war had an impact on storytelling. So this was the first mythologies. Like Captain America really is a symbol of all that. And all this, even Namor and the Human Torch were fighting against the Nazis. And I think we get Sunfire during that era as well, who represented Japan. So there's a lot going on in like the symbolic themes of comic books.
1946 to 1954, post-war crash, genre shift, and the comics code.
I'm gonna hold it up here. This is a good break point for me. We've gone all the way from the 1930s to 1946. Right about 30 minutes. So I figured this is a good break. But please come back. I'll kind of let you guys know when I'll be back. I should be back on later today to kind of go a little bit further. Starting again at 1946. And I'll take that all the way to 1954. But give me your thoughts and comments, any suggestions inside the comment section. As always, is appreciated. And as always, I ask that you hit that like and subscribe.